following is a Night Owl presentation.
Hi everybody, it's Raul Smith. Welcome to another episode of the Closing Tag Podcast. This is episode 14, and by all analytical metrics and measurements, this is probably the biggest episode of the Closing Tag in its history. Because as the title would suggest, this is the interview you've been waiting for with McClain Lindquist, the man behind The Telltale Heart, a film that we've been advertising on this very podcast from essentially day one. We talk about The Telltale Heart. We talk about movies in general, music. He's a former hip hop producer, so he knows a thing or two about, the music scene. Is Utah cool now? Is the Utah Jazz cool? He's an eternal optimist. He likes to call himself the eternal optimist of the Utah Jazz fandom. So we'll be diving right into that, as well as touching very briefly on the NFL, since it's almost football season, guys, as well as LeBron James, what's going on in LA. And towards the end of the episode, I'll drop my own little round robin, thoughts on various NBA topics. But yeah, this is a very awesome, very long episode, and it is brought to you free of charge, courtesy of Galactic Blue, your professional web development, graphic design, and logo design resource. Visit galacticblue.net for more information on how your business can benefit from our services, as well as The Telltale Heart, the independent short film that is just killing every single film festival there is. I would not be surprised if this ends up in Sundance. Let's be honest. Visit telltalemovie.com for more information on where you may be able to find this film, or you can stay tuned to the end of the interview and you'll hear it straight from the man's mouth. And also, Junk or Treasures. It's a kind of a revolutionary website that is going to change the game. Email customer service at jortinc.com for more information on this website that's coming up. And with all of that, we now turn it over to the interview that you've been waiting for, episode number 14. McClain Lindquist dropping knowledge bombs on everybody. So, hey, sit tight, kick back, maybe partake in a few extracurricular remedies, if you will, and enjoy.
You move real slow. Someday you'll look back and say it moved too fast. So remember, life can move real slow. Someday you'll look back and say it moved too fast. Where'd the time go?
I'm very excited and honored for our next guest on the Closing Tag. He's a former hip hop DJ, music producer, MC. He's a video producer and a director. You can catch his latest project, the one we've been hyping on this podcast for months now, perhaps his coup de grace, The Telltale Heart, online and at independent film festivals throughout the world. McClain Lindquist is my guest. McClain, it's been a very long time in the making. How are you, my friend?
Great. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So as I've done with each of the first two interviews, let's start with the Utah Jazz. First seed in the Western Conference, best record in the NBA. Injuries and defensive mismatches kind of sealed their fate in the second round, however, against the Clippers. With the re-signing of Conley, the drafting, trading, whatever you want to call it, of Jared Butler and all the acquisitions they've made over the last week, where do you foresee the Jazz going from here?
Well, if I was grading Zanuck and Smith's first draft here, I'd give it an A, and
Yeah.
also for off-season free agency an A as well. Starting with Butler from Baylor, they were looking at 15 to 20,
Yo.
looking to maybe trade to move up to get him. Everyone had him gone by 20, and when he at 21, I'm assuming like most Jazz fans like myself were thinking, oh, just each name clicked off. His name wasn't there yet. When it got to 30th, the Jazz traded. So and what the guy that you wanted is there, and you didn't, pick him, and you traded back. But that's why they run the Jazz and I don't, because they got him 10 picks later for a few $1 million less, and I got 2 picks from it as well. And if he turns out, he could be the steal of the draft. And I do foresee him backing up Conley. I think they'll at least try that. Maybe Trent Forrest makes the team, but I don't know. Mike Conley, he had to re-sign him, or we would have been in a world of hurt. We had the bird rights, and I think he is the nail in the coffin of the mythology of that no free agents want to come to Utah. It started with Joe Johnson, kind of, and it just is officially dead with Mike Conley. So, and then hot on his heels, his buddy that he played with in Memphis, Rudy Gay, which I'm stoked on, because the last few years I've been saying we need to get a Rudy Gay type player, long guy that can defend the 3, hit the occasional 3, can take it to the hole, and could also play the 5 spot if we get stretched out with small ball, which we saw happen. And another wish list was have a backup that's very similar to Rudy Gobert. So there wasn't really a switch in philosophy when he and Mike Conley go out at 6-minute mark in the first quarter. And Hassan Whitesides is that guy. He's Rudy Gobert light. So that's perfect. And, he was a borderline all-star. He had defensive player of the year votes one year. So if Quinn can, rein him in, much like he did with Jordan Clarkson, I think sky's the limit. And so those two are on 2-year deals, I believe. And then to where Eric Pascal can also play the 5 and the 4 with the stretch, and put Royce over at the 3. And he's best friends with Donovan. They went to middle school together, and he demanded that it was Utah. So it's exciting. We had the number 1 spot, like you said, last year, first time ever in our franchise history. That was really cool. That was special. It really was. Injuries, obviously in the playoffs, and then schemes where some of our personnel was exposed. We all love Favors, but they were just attacking the rim. Every team, it didn't matter the team. The second he was out there, they're attacking the rim. And then we got stretched out. We couldn't play small ball. And now we can. And I think I've been saying for, I guess now 5 years, that this was our year. So I think this is our year.
Let's hope so.
So yeah, I foresee people fitting in and doing well and getting a second chance like Whitesides. And I've always thought Rudy Gay would be a great addition, and he's a really good locker room guy too. So I'm the eternal Jazz optimist, I'm really excited about this next season for sure.
Awesome. And I'll circle back on Derek Favors here in just a minute. One thing that I was talking with Ben Phipps a couple of weeks ago is the perception, I guess, kind of shifting. You had mentioned it with Joe Johnson and now with Mike Conley. I kind of liken Dwayne Wade a little bit to that perception kind of shifting as well. And then we see JJ Watt kind of coming in for about a couple of days wearing Jazz shorts, trolling around Park City. Do you see that perception just kind of finally changing, in general, as far as Utah is concerned, not just the Jazz organization, but Utah in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a very well kept secret. This is a nice place, a good place to raise a family. And, it used to be affordable homes, but that's exploded. There's still a lot of room for growth here in Utah. And I think Dwayne Wade, absolutely played a part of that. And that's very neat to see. And, it's great. And Ryan Smith as well. taking us into the next generation. And that's the same with Utah. We're kind of on the cusp of could blow up, whether that's the Silicon Slopes or Utah film or music, or maybe it's the Utah Jazz winning an NBA championship. So it'd be nice to be in the finals again.
That would be nice. Absolutely. And I'll definitely circle back on the music scene here in Utah later on in the interview. So let's get back to Derek Favors, beloved fan favorite in these parts particularly, traded for a second-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Much like Ricky Rubio in Minnesota, I think it's safe to say Favors' time in Utah is officially done. What do you think his legacy will be, and where do you rank him amongst the all-time big men in Jazz history?
Oh, big man, he's top 10 for sure. And he's, he's a fan favorite, but he doesn't have like the fanfare of, say, Joe Ingles or B. Russ back in the day. But yeah, he's forever a Jazz man. We all love him, and it's just the NBA is shifting, and Quinn's philosophy he never really fit into, but he's such a great guy and such a really good basketball player too. He's the 3rd overall pick, I believe. He's legit, and he'll be playing in the league for a long time. It's just that role is he's near the basket, and that the game is changing where it's really positionless. So it's tough for him and other big guys where they're kind of being phased out, other than like Rudy Gobert, which he's kind of the anomaly. He's going for a silver medal because Americans are going to get gold. But Favors will forever be welcomed. He will be cheered, much like Paul Millsap and others, where even though they're playing for other teams and haven't played for us, for maybe a decade or whatever, we still see them as Jazzmen. I've got mad love for Paul Millsap and others that time really wasn't all that long on the Jazz. But yeah, he's top 10 for sure. He's great, and he's obviously always going to get respect and love in Utah, and we will miss him. It was just it was a money issue, $10 million already in the luxury tax, so that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other fan favorite that I think will probably go down as a top 10 player at his position, really maybe of the entire NBA, is Donovan Mitchell. You and I have been around the sports block a few times. We've seen a number of talented players come and go. Have you ever seen a more well-rounded person, somebody that's not just a great basketball player, but by all accounts, a great human being who gives back to the community and interacts in a positive light with the fans, quite like Donovan Mitchell?
I have LeBron James, and also there's others. There's some really good guys. Mike Conley is one of those guys. D Wade back in the day was one of those guys. Still is. There's a lot of really good, genuine people that play in the NBA and give back. And there's also some, head cases and whatever, but that's just life. But yeah, Donovan seems like a really genuine person. And he has taken to the community of Utah, if you will. And he's been embraced here pretty much from the start, and rightfully so, because he's, not only a great player, but yeah, it kind of transcends the sport where it becomes, especially with everything that was going on with BLM a year and a half ago, and so on in the bubble. He was that kind of conduit, or the voice that could carry over to people that probably wouldn't be exposed to that if it wasn't through the NBA and through his leadership and others. I know that turns some people off, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is. They're young black men in America, and he's really currently of the new batch is kind of the shining example of what you should aspire to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a great kid, young man. We're lucky to have him. I hope he, stays and wins us some championships, and we hang his number in the rafters, and we make another statue out front.
Absolutely. I've been advocating a statue out front for some time for him. McClain Lindquist joining us. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. You mentioned LeBron. So I mentioned we've been around the sports block a few times. I've talked about this with both James Scott of the Across the Pond, the sports podcast, and Ben Phipps in recent interviews. We've seen a lot of basketball players come and go, and also change their games to adjust to either the speed of the game, maybe passing them by, or their bodies just kind of going dipping a little bit. Great ones like Jordan, Malone, Kobe, all making adjustments to their game, adding little wrinkles to kind of stay ahead of the curve. Are we going to see a similar shift in LeBron James, or is this pretty much the end?
Yeah, I think what he's doing now is he already really expanded his game once he got his jump shot down, and then it really pushed it back to the 3-point line. That was a whole, that was a game changer. And
Yeah.
he is who he is versus a player like Ben Simmons or whatever that's totally limited. So, I don't foresee much that he's going to change at 36. The guys that you mentioned, they had already changed their games long before that, whether that was expanding out. Carl, it was, 15 to 17, and other guys, it was past the 3-point line. Charles Barkley included, that was wise because it's easier on your body and also if you are going behind the arc, then it's an extra point. And so analytically it's wiser, but yeah.
Sounds good. And then let's shift up a little bit more. Since we're not talking just basketball, let's switch gears. So the NFL season's coming up. Hall of Fame game was last night as of this recording. We've had a lot of players retiring: Drew Brees, Philip Rivers, Julian Edelman, Demaryius Thomas. Matt Stafford is now a Los Angeles Ram, probably the scariest quarterback in the NFC East. Tom Brady is probably in the midst of his last hurrah in Tampa Bay. And there was even talk of Aaron Rodgers maybe traded to the Denver Broncos at one point. I know you're a big Buffalo Bills guy, and you're salivating at the possibility of the Bills being the team to beat in the AFC East. So what are your general thoughts going into this season?
Yeah, I'm kind of out of my league, really, with the NFL. I've kind of drifted from it the last few years, actually, for a while. But, I'm an American male with blood running through my body. So I watch as it gets close to the end of the season, who the players are, as far as the teams that are competing for the Super Bowl. And obviously, make a big night, Sunday night of that as well. But yeah, it's tough being a Buffalo Bills fan because they weren't there for the last 30 years until maybe 2 years ago or whatever. Last year was a lot of fun. It's similar to being a Jazz fan. You have to be kind of guarded that you can't really let yourself get too high because, history has a way of repeating itself. But yeah, that's really cool that they're finally, that team, I guess last time it was like Doug Flutie or something. So,
oh, wow.
But yeah, they're solid, Chiefs are tough though. That's they're kind of it right now, in my opinion. But like I said, I'm out of my league here. It's the NBA. I can speak, pretty fluently on things, but the NFL, I'm back in the day, and especially when the Bills were rolling, man, it consumed my life. So, but there weren't all the options that kids have today. That was Monday Night Football, and then Sunday night, or Sunday. And that was it. We didn't have, you had like ESPN. That was about it. There wasn't the internet, and there weren't all these options. And so it was much more focused and such a big deal. And, as I've grown older, I've just kind of fallen away from football in general. I do like going to Weber State Wildcat games. And they have a great squad. They could win the Big Sky again. So
Yeah.
They could compete for the national title, which is great. They were 2 games away a couple of years ago. So
Yeah, they were. I'm actually kind of surprised that they did as well as they did that time. Descend into madness. with this retelling of the classic Edgar Allan Poe short story. The award-winning Telltale Heart film takes a head-first deep dive into the Sea of Madness, retelling a classic psychological thriller with a mind-bending, pulse-pounding, bloody, disgusting film. Starring award-winning actor Sonny Grimsley and directed by the brilliant McClain Lindquist. The Telltale Heart has won awards and made many appearances in many short film and independent film festivals, ranging from the FilmQuest Film Festival in Provo, Utah, to the Minefield Film Festival in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to even international film festivals throughout the world. Revisit Edgar Allan Poe's short story as this film brings more than just a classic horror story to a new audience, but also discovers a creative way to explore the groundbreaking psychological thriller. The narrative is enhanced through an unprecedented use of sounds and light, and the characters blend a modern sensibility with anachronistic charm as seen through an unsettling array of time and space, while a shifting setting disorients the unwitting audience. What is seen and what is heard leaves a perplexed audience to ask, what is insanity, and what truly constitutes reality? TelltaleMovie.com for more information on this brilliantly insane thriller. The closing tag is honored to have them as a sponsor of the podcast. So McClain Lindquist is joining us. As I mentioned, let's kind of get back to one of your wheelhouses. You are a former hip-hop DJ, having performed at various venues, not just in the state of Utah, but throughout the U.S. You and I have had this discussion on radio shows in the past about just the insane amount of talent, not just in the hip-hop scene, but in just general music scene in the state of Utah. I mean, I know most people listening to this have probably heard of like Royal Bliss, Imagine Dragons, Neon Trees, but there's just a plethora of talent in this state that people maybe don't know about. For those listening to this podcast that may or may not be in the state of Utah, can you give a general idea of just how vastly talented and underrated Utah's music scene really is?
Yeah, it's really just the arts. It's from dance and photography, theater, and that drifts over into music as well. And it's always been vibrant, at least what I've experienced. And it kind of ironically, the first Utah band that I got into, and they're still one of my favorite bands, and they were a very seminal hardcore or post-hardcore band from the early 90s called Iceburn. And I think they formed in 90. And they are and were groundbreaking, but they just released a new album a month and a half ago or so, and it's phenomenal. It's one of the best album. It's their best album for sure. It's just 2 songs. They're kind of an experimental hardcore band. It's they're very unique. They have elements of jazz and experimental music as well, progressive music. But this album is very kind of doom, very Black Sabbath. Meets a hardcore punk rock band, and the songs, each one of them are like 18 minutes long. There's 2 songs, and they're just it takes a while to understand the progressions, because they do progress. They don't revisit ideas. The song just keeps moving, and just beautiful once you catch that wave. It takes a while though, because it's really dense music. But once you do, it's incredible. It's just really heavy, doomish kind of. Don't want to say metal, but people that like metal would get into that. And it's unfortunate they're just not, like, they are on the underground tip, and but known. They should have been one of those bands from the 90s that was like on the cusp of about to blow up, but never did. But they're still making music. Gentry Densley, and he has Eagle Twin as well. That's on Southern Lord, both albums. That's the guys from Sun. And so they put out like Earth and a lot of other heavy music. That's Engine Kid. They're from Seattle. Um, so yeah, but Seattle and Salt Lake are kind of similar. Speaking of, in that regard of when Seattle, when those germs of bands of the pre-grunge and then what became grunge had, there's kind of a similar vibe here in Utah where it's incestuous. So a lot of people play with other people in bands. But yeah, there's a lot of movement within bands with people swapping or just evolving, and it's also a lot like Seattle where when you say grunge, there's not a specific sound that is grunge. You might single out whatever band,
Right.
but that band doesn't sound like all the other grunge bands. They all sound different from each other. There's common themes, and I don't know if Salt Lake really has those common themes. It's not like there's a Salt Lake sound. But yeah, Utah, the music is very diverse and just really talented, top to bottom, from studio musicians to the local bar band, or like you were mentioning, some of the larger acts that people know I might not realize are from Utah. The Used as well, and Iceburn. Check them out; they're incredible.
All right, sounds great. And then kind of a follow-up question to that, you had mentioned Iceburn. What other bands or musicians in the underground would you recommend to people maybe check it out on Spotify or SoundCloud?
That are specifically from Utah, or
just in general?
Just in general, a band called Neurosis. If you're also into heavy music, they're
right.
a completely independent band. They're from the late 80s. I think the first album was 87. Okay. And they're a working band, so they all have jobs. One of the guitarists and lead singer, he's a school teacher. I believe he teaches the 3rd grade. And they're incredible. They rewrote that. They are the definition of post-metal. And so when people talk about post-metal, that's the band that did that. They're also ever expanding their sound and the evolution of their music. They're really heavy, they're really intense, they're really dark, but they have a vast kind of catalog, if you will, of music that there's also some lighter stuff, but it is heavy, and it's completely in-house, so they are totally independent other than the record label and the distributor. I think they're on Relapse Records, which is independent. And they record with Steve Albini out of Chicago, who's famous in his own right, but he's also fiercely independent. And his band is really cool, Shellac. So if you like Neurosis and Iceburn, you should probably check out Shellac too. And check out the Melvins. They're still making music. They started in, I believe, 1987 as well. Maybe it was 84. And that band is the reason why we have Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. So if you like Nirvana, not that the Melvins sound anything like Nirvana, but they're one of the greatest groups of all time. They're probably my favorite group. And also on that tip as well, Fugazi, they're an independent band as well. They do everything much like Neurosis, except they own their label as well, and will physically package the CDs and stuff.
Nice. And
they had an album that debuted in the top 100. So yeah, check out those bands.
All right, sounds good. I definitely will personally. McClain Lindquist is joining us. So many of us look at what COVID-19 has done for both the music and movie scene, but I would also argue that technology has also had an equal impact on both of those industries. As somebody that's dealt firsthand with both music and movies, you probably have a better understanding than I do of the impact that both technology and COVID has had. What kind of impact do you foresee going forward, both tech and COVID-19 having on the music scene and the movie industry in the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah, well, it's massive. The impact first is just massive. So it's paradigm shift. This is a game changer, and you have to deal with it. This is like Napster or whatever. This is the printing press So we're at this moment, and I think the answer to those is fairly obvious. For movies, it's a streaming option, which you're seeing now. I just think that's kind of the future. I don't know what theaters, what their future holds. I don't want that to go away, obviously. I enjoy the theater experience, but I think within movies, yeah, and I think you'll also see the $300 million movies. I don't know if that's going to be a thing anymore, and I think that's great. Why don't they, even make three $100 million movies? And music, it's the same thing. It's already at that point, right? You didn't need the pandemic to force music into streaming, but I think it's also going to be live shows now, where bands maybe can't tour. I mentioned the Melvins. They parlayed the situation that they had Melvins TV, I think it was called. So they would do live shows and stuff, and like play full length albums and whatnot. So I think that's going to be the route, because you can do that, say on YouTube even, and have 20-30 million people watching that, where if you're on tour, that even at if you're a major band, that would be like you're playing to 20,000 people. So I think that's probably the future of music, would kind of be like VIP access to bands, like whether that's the rehearsal space or they're putting on these digital shows. I think we're going to see things like that, especially if you're forced to, not culturally, but just literally, like we were here recently. And the same with movies, for the film festivals and all that, the access that people have had the last year and a half is unparalleled, where they're getting these screeners, but they can watch it at their home. So that's opened up a whole new, it's birthed a new generation of film critics, because they can now get access to these movies, where prior, even if they had the physical ticket or whatever, some of them literally can't make it to the film festival, or even, they might be whatever, incapacitated, and they can't make it. So, or can't leave the house, because whatever is going on. We've all kind of dealt with that here recently. And you can watch the movie from your home. So I think that's the future. Both industries are teetering, so they need to adapt, or they'll be broke. So
I definitely agree with that. Adapting or to the times, or just pretty much getting baited into the dust. COVID, you had mentioned, has had a significant impact. Not sure if you're aware, many musicians have actually turned to, Patreon or even streaming platforms like Twitch to connect with their audience, that in ways that, live shows obviously couldn't do because of the pandemic. And even some of the lesser known bands are starting to pop up a little bit on Twitch as well. Do you see that continuing to be a trend once we finally overcome this pandemic, however long that may take? And do you also see Twitch kind of being like a place where musicians can go have their jam sessions online and have that interaction with their audience?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I don't know if it's Twitch or what app it might be, but yeah, that's inevitable. I just think that's the Pandora's box is open. But yeah, it's I think it's probably a good thing, breaking down the barriers. You couldn't even conceive of, texting Jimmy Page, or, friending Ozzy Osbourne back in the day.
No.
These people were godlike and were on mountains, and that's been broken down through social media, which is great. Obviously, a lot of social media is false. It's a story that you're presenting in smoke and mirrors. But also people can communicate instantly across the globe, which is incredible. And you can find these little niches of people that, are into things that you are into. And inevitably, it's going to be where people want to have a closer look inside, behind the green curtain, if you will. And social media is just perfect for that. And so if I was a teenager and I could, reach out to Maynard James Keenan or whatever, some app, I would totally be on that. I'd be doing that. So yeah, I think it's probably wise, just whatever people want. If people want vinyl, if people want, strictly streaming and want to hear it from you live or whatever, that's great, because it's all about performing live. So even if you're just in your, basement, you're still performing. And like I said, the audience could be just, millions of people, which is rad. So yeah, I think that's coming. I don't know which app it is though. I'm the wrong guy to ask, but yeah, get ready for that. So we're just, it's just walls being broken on a societal level. And I think most of it's good. I'm a very private person, so I won't be participating in that. But if it was just like playing music or whatever, that's rad. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And kind of a side question, could you imagine back in the day Ozzy Osbourne on Twitter in the height of his drug-induced just insanity?
Yes, I can. That's what keeps me up at night. It's the thought of Ozzy Osbourne in the late 80s on Twitter. Yeah, it would have been awesome. David Lee Roth would have been fun on Facebook. Yeah, Kurt Cobain on Instagram.
Nikki Sixx on TikTok. That would have been insane. All right, McClain Lindquist joining us. So before I let you go, I would probably be living with regret for the rest of my life if I didn't at least ask you a few questions about The Telltale Heart.
Oh, yeah.
I am fully aware of and have seen the film. For those that may not or may be asking the question and may not, be in the know, what exactly is The Telltale Heart?
Well, it's a short film from the short story by Edgar Allan Poe, written in 1847, I believe. It was the world's first psychological thriller. It's about the unreliable narrator. That's where that term comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is telling the story about how he murdered this old man because of his eye. He basically has a cataract, and it drives this guy crazy. And he's explaining to the police why he killed him, but also why he's not crazy. And it's just a brilliant story. I mean, all of Poe's stories are just incredible. He's such a good storyteller. And through my music projects, the Basement Pros, I made music videos, and it was just kind of the next step to do a short film. And I've always thought this would make a really good short film, one, because it's a short story, and two, because the versions that have been made, I always felt were missing something. Some of them were always great, but there was like one element that was missing, or some of them were really terrible, but they had one element that was really cool. And I just wanted to do, a modern telling that was really slick, but also artsy, but very true to the story. And so I figured that would be a good start as a short movie, and I could knock it out in a week, which we did. And
Wow.
Yeah, 6 days. And they were long days. I think we did 19 hours one day. But yeah, when you're all working towards something, because it takes a village to create a movie, everyone's just as important. Everybody that's on set there is just as valuable as the actors or the directors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you work together and you give your heart and soul. And so when you're exhausted, you're like, it's easy to keep working, because it's like, this is worth it. And we were trying to make a really scary movie, and we succeeded. And yeah, I'm glad people like it. It's been really well received. We had to wait for a year to kind of get it into film festivals because COVID. So we're a year behind where we should be, but that's okay. That's life. And everyone else, is a little bit behind as well, other than the billionaires who are flying to space. But yeah, so it's 20 minutes long. That was how long it took me to read the story. It was about 20 minutes. So I did about a page a minute. So, and I just wanted to make it, like, so a contemporary audience of horror and thrillers and slashers and whatever, types of
Yeah.
crime movies would feel comfortable watching this movie. And then we pushed it even further with like the edit, where it's very fast, and it feels almost like an action movie. So we just kind of laid it all out on the line. If I think one of the pieces didn't align, none of it would have worked. So it's kind of a house of cards that didn't fall, and we
Yeah.
were kind of foolishly trying to make the definitive version, of a story where there's, I'm assuming, 1,000 movies of the Telltale Heart that have been made over the years. And we were trying to, break the mold. And I don't know. I think we just might have. Someone will have to prove us wrong, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
very
but yeah,
much.
it all goes back to Halloween. I think it was the third grade. Our librarian read the Telltale Heart, and I that's also what turned me on to horror and kind of the darker side of art. That led to EC Comics, and going on the terror ride at Lagoon and Rocky Point Horror Haunted House.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we when I was on tour in the Midwest, Weird Beard, speaking of hip hop DJs, turntablists, was asking, say, you're going to do a movie, right? And it was like, yeah. And then I brought up the Telltale Heart, that I always thought that would be a good short. And like a year later, I was doing it. So
Nice.
yeah, it just happened. It was very organic. There wasn't any big plans, or like, it wasn't grandiose. But I did a full year of pre-production, which is
Wow.
unheard of. But we were prepared.
Sounds like it, yeah. And then since you mentioned the film festivals, we could probably do an entire interview episode just listing all the film festivals that the Telltale Heart has been admitted to. So instead, I'll simply ask, what has been your best experience so far doing the film festival circuits and whatnot, at least what you could do?
Yeah, both physical, which I've done, and virtual as well. But both was the connections with people, with other filmmakers. I cherish those friendships now, and it's really cool. I wasn't expecting that. I really didn't want to do the film festival run. My producers talked me into it, and I'm really glad they did. And then it became kind of like the only option, because streaming, with coronavirus and all that. So yeah, I'd boil it down, just the connections that I've had with the people that are putting on the film festivals, and then also really the other filmmakers. And usually it's a very brief interaction, or for a couple of days or whatever, but then through social media, these people carry on, and it feels like they're part of your life, because they are, if you're liking, sharing, and commenting. So
yeah. And then last question, where can people find the Telltale Heart?
well, if you go to telltalemovie.com, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
We will soon have a page with all the film festivals. So some of them are active. The admission is different on all of them. Some of it's all of $5, and you get access to like 200 movies. Some of it's like $30. Others, you can buy physical tickets. We're going to be in Albuquerque the 27th, I believe,
Nice.
August, at Minefield.
Nice.
Joe Olivas, who was the director of photography, Sonny Grimsley, who played the narrator, myself, and I think a few others might go. So we're excited about that, physically being there, because it's watching your movie in a theater is where it's at. That's like seeing the band live. It's how movies, it's how they're made, why they're made, and how you should see them. So we're excited about that. And also just New Mexico. New Mexico's a beautiful place with great food, and a lot of culture there, and the physical beauty of New Mexico, and that's reflected in a lot of the artists there, Georgia O'Keeffe and numerous others.
Mhm.
I believe Edward Abbey, he might have been Arizona, but yeah, it's neat, and we're excited. But if you go to any of our social media, you'll get, you know, the info of that. Hey, we're in this film festival. Check it out if you think it's something that you'd want to. Just go through the mission, and then you have like a week's long pass or whatever, or they let you watch it a couple times before you can't pull it up. Every festival is different. And
Yeah.
also, if you really want, you can buy a limited edition VHS.
Ooh, all right.
So, yeah, we plan on having a premiere in October here in Ogden, Utah. And we'll also be premiering our Telltale L through Utah, which is a
Ooh.
Ogden, Utah brewery, which we're doing the Telltale L. It's like a Kolsch blood orange, which we're going to put a little food coloring in to make it blood red.
Okay.
And we'll be giving those out at the premiere. We don't have everything locked down, but we're still trying to get it. But it'll probably be at Larry Miller's movie theaters there in Ogden.
Yeah.
I hope to be middle of October, and then we'll see. You know, as far as the general public's availability, I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question. And if you asked any filmmakers, you could even be Christopher Nolan. He would say, I don't know, because it's all up in the air. It's a totally, you know, influx industry currently, and this might be the beginning of the end. So I hope not. I want to make more movies. So.
Absolutely. And count me in on that blood orange ale for sure.
I've got a pack set aside for a case for you.
All right, sounds good. He is an award-winning film director, executive producer. Yeah, you've won awards. I've been keeping up on your socials. Hip hop MC, DJ, guy that knows a lot about a lot. McClain Lindquist is my guest. McClain, my buddy, we've come a long way from the Wednesday meetings at the Village Inn in Roy.
My favorite logo still, the Basement Pros, is the original record, the BMW rip. Still this day, I have those shirts, and I love that.
Sounds
obviously
great.
we couldn't go too much with it because, you know, we stole it. But yeah, those days, that's fun. You know, the fledgling moments of, you know, intrepid troubadours. So that was cool. I was glad you were there to be a part of that. And then
Sounds
also
great.
on our first tour, you came all the way out to Denver.
Yeah, I did. I did. I still remember that.
The festivities started a little early for that show. I think around St. Louis. So.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Well, it's good talking to you, man, and much success to you in the future.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'm back on the road again. Every night there's something different around the bend, and my rambling fever's gone. Yeah, my rambling fever's gone for now.
So before we end this interview or this episode, I wanted to just kind of give you my round robin thoughts on the NBA in general, since free agency, the height of free agency is pretty much done for. Just kind of touching base on a few moves here and there. I did see that the NBA is opening an investigation into possible tampering regarding Lonzo Ball going to Chicago and Kyle Lowry going to Miami. I am going to prefer to not mention anything about that until more details come out. But I'd imagine that, you know, there probably was some tampering going on regarding, you know, pretty much everybody. I know for a fact that there was tampering on one specific thing, but we won't get into that. Let's first start with the Jazz, since that is the home team. So if you have not been paying attention, the Jazz not only re-signed Mike Conley, but also signed two big-time minimum free agents in Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside. Re-signed Jarrell Brantley, that just got announced moments ago before I recorded this part of the podcast episode, and traded for Eric Pascal, as well as, what's his name? Jared Butler. So let's start with the draft day trade of Jared Butler. So according to reports, the Jazz thought that Jared Butler was going to be off the board by pick 30. So they basically were like, all right, screw it. We're just going to trade the pick to whoever, get a second round pick and maybe a couple other future seconds. And surprisingly enough, Jared Butler not only made it to 30, he made it to 40, where the Jazz had drafted or traded to. And by the time pick number 39 was announced, supposedly Justin Zanuck, the general manager of the Jazz, basically said, Jared Butler, get it done now. It's a good trade. It's a good move. Justin Zanuck pulled another rabbit out of the old Lindsey Zanuck hat. Dennis Lindsey is notorious for these awesome draft day trades. That's how we got Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell to begin with. Jared Butler, I don't think is going to be on that same level of Gobert and Mitchell, but he's going to be an excellent, excellent role player, an excellent bench player. I think he's going to do amazing work. If he's not getting 15 to 20 minutes by the end of the season, I don't know what Quinn Snyder's even doing at this point. Conley being re-signed is a no-brainer for championship aspirations. The Jazz are in win-now mode, and I think getting Conley back on board was priority one above everything else, above keeping any of the other guys not named Mitchell and Gobert, above just about anything. So keeping Conley was a huge, huge part of the process. Signing Rudy Gay caught me by surprise, to be honest, because that was one player that I thought in San Antonio last year was sorely underused. I get that he's 34. I get that he's older and slower, but he's still, got that veteran craftiness, very similar to Joe Johnson, a few years ago when he signed with the Jazz. I think he's got that same veteran savviness and veteran, know-withal to basically, take advantage of some of these younger, lesser talented and lesser experienced players. Hassan Whiteside blew me away. I was not expecting that at all. The Jazz signing Hassan Whiteside to a veteran minimum $1 million deal. It's basically to fill a role, fill a need, fill the void left behind by Derek Favors being traded. It's a good move. Hassan Whiteside, as McClain basically just coined him, Rudy Gobert light. He is very much like Rudy Gobert. He's got a lot of defensive prowess about him, great rim protector. I don't think he's going to contribute much offensively. He doesn't really need to, especially with Jordan Clarkson kind of running things on the bench. So just kind of looking out for him defensively is going to be awesome. And then Jarrell Brantley, just kind of filling the void on the very end of the bench, 13, 14. It's pretty awesome to see some of these guys coming back after last season. It's going to be pretty awesome. We basically got the same team that had the number one seed overall in the entire NBA, but we added Gay and Whiteside. So that's going to be freaking awesome. And then adding on top of that, the championship experience of Eric Pascal, who was with the Golden State Warriors and then was traded to the Jazz for a second-round pick. One of the second-round picks that we actually got from Memphis in that Jared Butler deal. So, again, Zanuck is just pulling rabbits out of his hat like they're Tic Tacs. So, Pascal is going to be awesome. Him pairing up with his childhood buddy Donovan Mitchell is going to be a game changer, I think, especially on the bench. It's going to be amazing. I think the Jazz are going to be not really clear-cut favorites to win the West, but they'll definitely be in the thick of things for sure, especially now with the Clippers probably not going to be mattering a whole lot with Kawhi Leonard's injury. Next, the Lakers, obviously the talk of the town, the talk of the NBA world. The Lakers trading pretty much their entire bench and anybody and everybody that they could trade for Russell Westbrook. It's a head scratcher. It really is a head scratcher. I did a column, like one of those small little columns for a website not that long ago, towards the end of the season, detailing who I think the 3 most untradeable players in the entire NBA are, based not just on how much money they're making, but also based on the fact that really nobody else wants them. That was Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers, John Wall of the Houston Rockets, and Russell Westbrook of the now Los Angeles Lakers. And to me, trading guys like Kyle Kuzma and I can't remember the other guy's name, basically trading those guys for Russell Westbrook on paper is fantastic. In practice, it's going to be a disaster for the Lakers. I don't care how many of these old-time, veterans that they snatch up in free agency, the Dwight Howards and the, I forget the other guy's name, and the Marc Gasols and all these guys, they can snatch all these guys up. Carmelo Anthony, that's really helping. Good job. All these guys that on paper are probably going to make the Lakers unstoppable are going to actually make the Lakers perfectly beatable, especially come playoff time. Russell Westbrook, since the epic matchup in the playoffs between the Thunder and the Warriors, the matchup that convinced Kevin Durant to go from the Thunder to the Warriors, since that playoff matchup in 2016, Russell Westbrook's only won 1 playoff series. That was with the Houston Rockets. That was with James Harden. 1. Granted, AD and LeBron are not Harden. AD and LeBron are AD and LeBron. They're going to figure it out. They'll probably win a playoff series. They won't get eliminated in the first round or even in the play-in. They probably won't even, be bad enough to make the play-in. They'll probably just be like a 1 or 2 seed. But I don't think that they're going to make it past the second round. I really don't. I think Westbrook is too much of a head case. He gets in his own way too much. Same with Melo. I don't think either of them are going to last very long in LA, especially with that town and those fans, bandwagon or not. They are going to demand excellence. They're going to demand championships, rings. And Westbrook, to this day, has 0 rings. So I don't think it's going to be a case of LeBron and AD making up for Westbrook's deficiencies on that end, unfortunately. And then there's the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champs, if you will. I don't really know too many moves that they've made other than the trade between them and Memphis, sending Sam Merrill to the Memphis Grizzlies for Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen adds a level of toughness to the Bucks that I don't necessarily think they need. I mean, unless they feel like they need additional toughness off the bench, I don't see where Grayson Allen fits into this scheme at all. But then again, Sam Merrill didn't fit into it all that much either. He was basically along for the ride. So it's very interesting I think the Bucks will probably still be in the thick of it, despite the moves by Miami, despite the moves by Washington. I think Washington's gotten better. I think Chicago's definitely gotten better now that they've got, and I'll get to them in a minute, now that they got who they got. I don't think that they're really going to be, that much different. And especially now that they have that championship monkey off their back. Now that Budenholzer's got that championship monkey off his back as a coach, you're going to see a lot more confident and a lot more dangerous Milwaukee Bucks team this coming season. Chicago is going to be a threat to the 5th and 6th seed. Sorry, not sorry. There's just too much talent right now in the East. You've got Brooklyn, you've got Milwaukee, you've got Miami, you got all these different teams. Chicago's gotten better. They're not going to be they're not going to be a doormat anymore in the Central Division. They've got Lonzo Ball. They've got Lauri Markkanen. They've got Vucevic at the center. He's going to be pretty tough. And now they've got DeMar DeRozan, who's going to be especially tough and is probably going to be the de facto leading scorer for that Bulls team. DeRozan is probably the single biggest move that Chicago's made in a long time. I think that the Bulls were lucky to be able to get both Ball and DeRozan in the same offseason. And, with those two guys, they're definitely going to have a lot of success in the regular season, but probably not that much, at least in the playoffs, because they don't really have any experience. I mean, yes, DeRozan is a part of the Spurs, but he was a part of the Raptors before being moved to the Spurs, really at the tail end of that dynastic run that San Antonio had. And I'll get to San Antonio in a minute. I don't see Chicago really being much of a threat to the Milwaukees and the Brooklyns and the Miamis of the world. I think they're going to be more in contention with like the Bostons and the trying to think off the top of my head, the Indianas, but that's still better competition than what they were facing last year. And sadly, that brings me to San Antonio. I think that they're done. I think the Spurs, we keep writing these guys off. Every single year we think this is it. This is the end. This is where Greg Popovich gets on his white horse and rides off into the sunset. But I think this is legitimately the end. We've got a team that didn't even make the playoffs. They made the play-in, but they lost in the play-in tournament to Memphis. And they just lost DeMar DeRozan and Patty Mills for essentially nothing. And for a team like San Antonio in a small market, that is going to hurt a great deal. Speaking from someone in a small market, I should know. It's going to be tough for San Antonio to not be a lottery team, to be perfectly honest. I think they're going to be, if not the worst team in the West, probably in that lower 3 to 5 team tier that don't make the play-in. Them with Sacramento and Minnesota and I think probably Oklahoma City. I think those 4 teams are probably going to be the bottom 4 teams in the Western Conference, unfortunately, because, while I am a Jazz fan, I admired and loved watching that run with Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Kawhi Leonard and Tony Parker, with Popovich as the guy. And now it's all gone. It's been a great run for the Spurs. I'd imagine that Spurs fans are not really sad that it's over, but happy that it happened, that they got 4 championships out of it. And yeah, this is the end for the Spurs, I think. And in Popovich in general. And I think there's a reason why nobody wanted to hire Becky Hammon, during this recent stretch of coaching changes. And I think it's because everybody knows that she's going to be the one to kind of step in for Popovich when all is said and done. She's going to end up taking Popovich's place, if not the middle of this season, but definitely next offseason. I think she's going to end up replacing him at some point. And with that, we are out of time for today. I want to personally thank McClain Lindquist for coming on and providing some amazing insight and knowledge. I also want to thank each and every person that is watching the archive videos on YouTube, downloading the pod, or even checking us out on our Facebook page. Links are all in the description. Every video, or every view, every download, every listen counts. So thank you as always. A reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Galactic Blue, your professional web development, graphic design, and logo design resource. Visit galacticblue.net for more information on how your business can benefit from our services, as well as The Telltale Heart, the independent short horror film that's just sweeping all the film festivals right now. Visit telltalemovie.com for more information on where you'll be able to find it in your area, as well as Junk or Treasures, the revolutionary new website that's about to change the game. Contact customer service at jortinc.com for more information. If you'd like to help sponsor the podcast, we don't have a Patreon, but I am open to suggestions. Hit me up at raul@theclosingtag.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and many other podcast providers. Our video of each podcast can be found on our dedicated YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. Links are all in the description. Thank you guys again for listening, for watching. Thank you again to McClain Lindquist for coming on and being an amazing guest. And remember to always include your closing tags.